Welcome everyone. So I'm here, we're going to have a proper intro in a minute from Dan, but I'm here just to sing a welcome to you today. And this is a song that I learnt from our wonderful Kathy Bullock. This song has become a real popular one in my workshops. This is by her sister, Diane White Clayton. I'm going to sing it twice. The first time I'm singing it to welcome you. The second time, if you could sing it with me to welcome each other here into this space. You are welcome, you are welcome, you are welcome in this space. You are welcome, you are welcome, you are welcome in this space. To each other. You are welcome, you are welcome, you are welcome in this place. You are welcome, you are welcome, you are welcome in this place. Yeah, welcome to you. Glad you're all here, and handing over to Dan.
Thank you so much, Fran. Thank you for setting the tone. Hello, everybody. My name's Dan Zanes, and I'm so grateful to be here with you all. This is it's a thrill. It's an honor for me. I know that the panelists that we have today have all at one time or another mentioned that they would, if there was something like this coming up, that they would like to be a part of it. So I can tell you now, the spirit behind all this is generous, it's open hearted. I know it'll be informative, and I know it will be inspiring. So I want to welcome all of you for taking time out of your day. We know there's so many things you could be doing right now, but we know that you're here because you care. And want to welcome people from the Daily Antidote of Song community. We know there's people here from other arts organizations. Welcome to you. We know there's people from states all around the United States. Welcome to you. And we know there's people zooming in from abroad. So welcome to you too. What are we doing? We're going to have a discussion here, and we're going to talk about racial justice. And like I said, the panelists we have today, I know all of them, and I'm very familiar with their work as musicians and also as deep and thoughtful people. So I'm excited to be here and to be a part of this. We're going to focus on racial justice. We're going to have it in and around the arts. You know, as we think about this is something that we all care so deeply about. So it's going to be racial justice. There's going to be somewhat of a focus on the arts. I've never moderated before. I'm a little nervous, but I'm excited. And like I said, I'm very, very honored. So why don't we do this? Why don't we take 30 seconds for some sort of quiet meditation, just to get our heads and our hearts together, and set our intentions for this time that we have together this afternoon. So let's take 30 seconds, and I'll call you back. All right. Welcome back, everybody. So we're gonna do a round of we're gonna have a round of introductions now, and I'll start by telling you a little bit about myself and about myself as it relates to racial justice in this conversation that we're about to have. As I said, my name is Dan Zanes. I'm a singer and a songwriter. I make music with my wife Claudia Zanes. We're Smithsonian Folkways recording artists. We play electric folk music for people of all ages. We do a lot of shows for families. We live in Baltimore. We do a lot of shows locally here, in many different communities, many of them that don't have a lot of live music. So we're very grateful to be community-minded musicians. I grew up in a kind of a white monoculture in Concord, New Hampshire. Wasted my youth playing rock and roll, and I've been making family music since right around 2000, and that's when I was introduced to anti-racism. And it was a friend had sort of helped me shift my perspective, and and enough that then I asked him if there was a book I could read, and he suggested "Why Are All the Black Kids Sitting Together in the Cafeteria" by Dr. Beverly Daniel Tatum, and I said I'd read the book. As soon as I got off the phone call, I regretted saying it because I knew that reading this book was going to fill me with shame and guilt, and I had enough of that already, But my friend Mike Feldstein had what I wanted. He had a multiracial group of friends and colleagues. He was comfortable moving through the world. He was able to speak about race and racism in a relaxed way. I didn't have any of that, and I wanted what he had. So I was willing to do what he was doing. And rather than feeling shame and guilt, I felt a sense of incredible liberation. And I feel more of that every time I'm able to get together with other people. Because for me, as a white person, there's so many layers of racial conditioning and socialization that I want to unpack so that I can feel better and so that I can be more useful in the world as we're all trying to make positive change. So a conversation like this definitely speaks to me. Musicians that I love talking about a subject that has changed my life and continues to change my life. And for me, it's an ongoing process. It's not a one-off. It's not a workshop. It's not a book. It's an ongoing process. It's a daily process. So something like this really does lift my spirits. And like I said, I'm so grateful to be here with all of you. So I'm going to turn it over now to Dr. Kathy Bullock.
Thank you, Dan. Hello, everybody. Thank you for inviting me to be a part of this very important ongoing sharing, an opportunity to just share our stories as we think about within the context of race. I was born in Washington, D.C. My father was a Baptist minister and very active in the civil rights movement. I thought everybody was involved with marches and meetings and all kinds of protests and everything, and very steeped. There was about 70% African American in my community there in Washington. Lots of people from the South, particularly Black folks. So I grew up with music being everywhere. God, the idea of and faith and hope, and that you're standing on the shoulders of those before you. And so there's you must do more, and it's expectation, high expectations in the community. So then I taught at Berea College for about 30 years in Kentucky. And now I'm retired. Hallelujah. I always have to say that. And and now I get to go around and see marvelous folk like the ones on this panel, and get to share my music and share my stories. And the reason I would be involved in this conversation, because I don't see it as optional. I see it as my life. And so I can choose to be all upset and just implode from all the things that I see around me, or I can be an agent of change, however and whenever that opportunity arises. And that's my decision. So that's why I will always be supportive and involved however I can in these conversations.
Right. Thank you so much, Kathy. Welcome. Glad to be here with you. Fran.
Thank you.
Hi. Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Kathy. Great to be here with you and hubby as well. Lovely to meet you, hubby. Great to be with the Daily Antidote folks here. Yeah, wow, what to say. So, well, basically, I was introduced to the Daily Antidote song through a project that was I think probably the proudest thing that I've done to date in my life, which Kathy was a part of. We were the steering team, me, Kathy, and another UK choir leader called Sean Cruz. And it was after being in a singing network in the UK, just seeing how much music was being passed around and appropriated really without proper recompense. So we created the Black Lives Matter Commissioning Project, and we raised all this money, and we wrote all of these we didn't write the songs. We commissioned these wonderful composers to write songs, composers like Leah Morris, Melanie DeMore, Arne Batson, and Diane Kathy's sister, and 4 UK composers. Um, so that was something that just really changed my life in terms of really feeling like I can really make a difference here, to something in my line of work that I just felt so passionately about it. I'm a woman of mixed heritage, just in case that's not obvious from the naked eye. Sometimes it is not. So I am. My mother is British and my dad is Mauritian, which has roots both in India, Indian lineages, and different African countries. Um, and I had some very strong ancestral experiences just before George Floyd was murdered, which basically catapulted me into anti racism work being really central to my life. And that has now evolved into, I would say, more healing work, in that I'm running a project now with running singing and healing circles for people of colour and people of mixed heritage, and also embodied decolonisation work for white folks as well. And just, yeah, I've just run my first mixed heritage retreat last weekend, which was amazing. And just being in this healing space with people, where past wounds from racism could come up, that confusion around being mixed race. And then I have one in June for people of colour. And just the work just feels really meaningful for me. And the anti-racism work is a really key strand in my work with white folks as well. So I've said a lot there. That's a little intro. But yeah, this work just really, it's heart work for me. And it feels, really like a calling. And healing feels so central for me, for all of us, really. Yeah, so that's what I'll say at this point.
Thank you so much, Fran. Welcome. So glad that you're here. Hubby Jenkins in Queens, New York.
Hi everybody out there. Kathy, Fran, Dan. Yeah, I'm Hubby Jenkins. I'm from Brooklyn. I live in Queens. And my latest tag now has been I play old time music and talk about black people. That's what I do all day. Every day. I was in Carolina Chocolate Drops, an all black string band for a very long time. We traveled around the world with our mission of just spreading the news that black people helped invent American music. That was our stated goal. And I guess my journey of coming to this fight for anti-racism, or whatever you'd like to call it, probably began the day I was born. But after that, it came when I learned that the banjo was a black instrument. That was my, the shot came from the grassy knoll, they're lying to us kind of moment. And allowed me to open up and try to use my love of traditional American music to facilitate conversations about race historically and present day. And I'm glad to just be in this room and keep the talk going. So thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, hubby. Really glad to see you and glad that you're here. Glad we're all here together. All right. So at this point, before we get into the deep part of the conversation, we're going to put up some quotes and just take a minute to read them, just to sort of, again, set a little bit of a tone here. These are quotes from the Daily Antidote of Song Racial Justice Journey. These have appeared in the last 3 months in the e-news newsletters that have gone out, and you'll all be invited to be a part of those if you're not already. So let's take a minute to read through some of these. All right, and those will be available for further observation. So let's get into our discussion here. We've got a few questions just to get us as jumping off points. If we don't get any further than the first question, we know we're going to have a great conversation here. And if you know anything about musicians, you know this is what we like to do: sit around and talk. It's 90% of the job description. And the talk can be very, very inspiring. So here's what we got to get us going for the very first one. There's been a lot of talk in the last couple years about different types of racism: individual, interpersonal, institutional, and structural. Many of the people in attendance today are members or leaders of organizations that may be in the process of increasing their anti-racist practice. So for the panelists, can you speak to the notion of racism and anti-racism at the institutional level? What have you seen working, not working? And for our audience, we're the idea that we spoke about earlier was to sort of keep our conversation centered on stories, personal experiences. The facts and figures are well documented, but these stories you're only going to get here. So let's open the question up for institutional racism. Kathy, you want to take us in with that?
I will jump in there, Dan. By the way, Hubby, did you come to Berea to my class when Caroline Chocolate Drops came there?
I was there. Yeah.
And
yeah. yeah. We could talk about it. And I'm coming to Berea like in a couple months too, but we'll talk about it later.
Okay. Just had to, y'all know that was like 10 years, I don't know, a long time ago. Anyway, back to the subject at hand. When I think of institutional racism, I can point to every and any institution in the United States, and I can think of ways in which that continues, and it's steeped in there. And I said, let's pick one. And so I picked looking at school, and I wanted to share an experience I had. And so before I do that, we'll talk about the whole concept of desegregating the schools in the United States, because historically Black people weren't allowed to read or education. They could be killed, eyes burned out, even if they were reading during enslavement time. Afterwards, there were schools built and money ran out. So what emerged was a lot of inequity in the particular areas where there would be schools with white students and they would have the materials they need and the facilities. And for Black schools, they would have beat up desks or torn down things. The heat might not work. The books were rare and in between. But they had people and teachers who were passionate and loving and teaching those students. So then there was the fight to integrate, saying, so let everybody go to the same schools to get rid of that. And plus and minus. So integration happened, but mostly it was Black people being bused to white schools. Didn't have much of white students going to Black schools. And in the interim, Black students ended up in schools. The Black teachers did not also go to the white schools in the same way. So here, Black students now in white spaces and in the minority with white teachers who oftentimes did not fully even see them as they're trying to get their work done. So there was the challenge in that. And one way that comes to mind to me specifically is growing up in Washington, D.C., we called it Chocolate City when I lived there because it was 70% African American in the city itself. And so all my teachers and growing up and everything, they were Black. The schools, facilities aren't not all that great necessarily, but through all kinds of fabulous teachers. So when I was in junior high school, I was selected to represent my school in a project for 1 week where I would take a bus to go out to a special program. There were about 4 or 5 of us from junior high schools in the city. Now remember, I didn't tell you this yet, I was the valedictorian of my school, which means that was the highest grades and all that, blah, blah, blah. So the teacher asked me to go. I'm excited. I get to be out of school. I get to go to this program. My teacher at school, all of us Black people at my school in the city, she says, well, I don't like this program. I'm saying, what? She says, why don't they have some of their students come here to our school as well, not just ship y'all out there? I said, So we got on the bus and this bus came for us where we met, and we were driven out to this beautiful school in one of the suburbs there, Washington, D.C., all white. We got there, and so we were invited to choose a topic, and then with that group, we would explore that topic for the week, traveling around the area. I chose architecture because I wanted to learn more about it. So at the first session when I sat there, the rest of the students started talking about architects, architectural periods, architectural styles. I knew absolutely nothing, because I thought I was there to learn, but the white students already knew a lot. So my first experience was white students that I was the dummy, knowing nothing, and they all knew everything else. Valedictorian. my black suit, okay? And I knew absolutely, and they were all going off, and so we would drive through different parts of the city and look at different architectural buildings, and then they drove through the area where my church was and I lived, and I was proud, and I wanted to say, oh, that's my church, and people looked like they were embarrassed. The students like, and I'm wondering, well, what's wrong with I thought I was very proud of it in that part of the city. It wasn't like slums or anything, but there was this underlying. So my first experience dealing with white folks was that obviously I didn't know enough. And because of how I had been in my home experience, it just meant I had to work harder. I didn't take it that I didn't know anything. I just, okay, that means when I'm around white people, I'll just have to do twice as much, 3 times as much work because that's what it is. They somehow just know everything and I don't. And the white people on TV that I saw were senators and people at that time who seemed to know quite a bit, and at that time, and were very, just my white people. So I would stop there saying that the institutional racism allowed this, both this inequity to continue to emerge, which even when there would be efforts to try to bring folks together, it always ended up seeming to be black people coming in a deficit, not equally sharing with the resources and the preparation, which then perpetuated the concept of, well, something must be wrong with me or my people or my system. And so that's one way that it has shown its knowledge. That would not have happened, I believe, if there were black folks who were visionary at the table when these preparations were made, or who could make adjustments as needed.
It's interesting you bring that up because, like there are programs like that still exist today. Right. I mean, I don't know. Maybe you went to high school a couple of years ago. I don't know. But like here in New York City, where I live and grew up, we have a very segregated school system. My elementary school that I went to was in the border of Clinton Hill and Bed-Stuy. My school had to shut down because of asbestos. We had all kinds of other problems we don't need to get into, but it was an underfunded black school. And then they had programs that would go see the white school, go see the nice school. Now go back to your school. Actually, you can't for a couple of days because of asbestos. Good luck. That was the kind of stuff that was going on. And it brings up the points that you're talking about shame and feeling inferior is what we're teaching POCs and kids in this when we do the school system like that. I don't know if I necessarily agree with your point about it should have been black visionary teachers. You might be able to speak more to that as a teacher. I feel like a lot of that comes from how are funds allocated? How are teachers able to do with what they have? Would it have been better for you never to have seen that school? And, you ended it by saying that I'm going to be twice as good. I'm going to build a 300-foot building or whatever. Was that what they were hoping for? I don't know. So, but I do agree with the idea of that.
To me, wishful feeling. I'm talking about the people that thought of this cool idea to take these black folks from the inner city and bring them out to the rest, and just that whole concept about that.
Yeah,
that piece. That's what I was talking about. And when I said visionary, it didn't have to be teachers, just people who were involved in this concept. But of course, like you said, we were coming out of the concept of integration, which was that very idea of bringing. It's just a double-edged sword. It's what I think I'm trying to say, which continues. And I think I would have got that message if I waited till college to go. And it did prepare me a little bit before, but my God.
No, I agree with that. And I think when we get to the institution of education, schools, it's just it has to be money and good teachers, It wasn't until I think I got to, my elementary school was all black. I also went to a after school program that I was all black teachers, black kids, Latin kids. That's why I learned the Black National Anthem. We did step team for Christmas. We did, you know, like just black stuff. I'm going to try not to curse. The New Yorker in me is not going to come out. We did a lot of black stuff there. And then when I was in elementary school, you know, my second grade teacher, Miss Smiley, had us learning Swahili and is like teaching us about Morehouse, you know. And then we moved to Park Slope, which was was becoming a predominantly white neighborhood and is now. And I didn't have any of that. And that's why I learned the national anthem. I was like, oh, okay, that song's not as good as what we got. And, you know, so on and so forth. But I also had access to computers and started getting those things. So I just think like it's really just about where do we put those resources. Having good teachers, which I had at that school, but did not have the money for it. And once I got into a place where I could get to things, it did help me grow and allow me to grow just as you're describing too. I hope that adds to the conversation, but yeah.
Of course it does. Fran, jump on in here. Come on the other side of the ocean.
Yeah, well, I was just going to say it's just really touching to hear you, Kathy, and I just imagining you as a young person going through that experience, and it just reminded me again of how much in this work it's like our nervous systems just get primed at a very, very early level for a particular experience, and having that as a formative experience, then what that then leads to in terms of self-belief, in terms of how we feel about ourselves. Yeah, so it's just, yeah, it's touching to hear your story. Thank you for sharing it with us. I don't know whether I can bring in something from the experience of over here. Can I bring working with a singing organization here? So yeah, when this question was asked about systemic racism and doing anti-racist work, I kind of thought of the organization that I was working with here in the UK, which is like my first kind of taste of anti-racism work, really. And I have to say, it's like one of those experiences which was really formative because it was really, really difficult. So I was one of two people of colour on the board, and I was just finding my way with doing anti-racism work and taking the courage to speak out about various things that I could see that were happening that weren't okay. So the start of the project that I mentioned, thinking about songs just freely changing hands, songs of the African diaspora, songs from many other cultures that singing leaders would just commodify and would teach in their choirs, and there wouldn't be any money changing hands, there wouldn't be proper cultural honouring of where those songs were from. And various different things. We were talking about diversity in our choirs and how we could make them more diverse, make spaces more welcoming for people of colour. And it took quite a lot from me in terms of feeling like I needed to like speak out. And one of the things that I found difficult looking back was that I was learning too. And I think to always reflect is a kind of key part of this work of anti-racism, to always reflect on where you're coming from at all times. But I find that as someone who is a person of colour, and I know this from other people of colour too, it can be that we end up self-reflecting more potentially than white folks in the space. And what I was feeling with the trustees was that people couldn't really see that their own biases and conditioning that were coming in. So when I would make a challenge, the fact that there would be a lot of reactivity, a lot of defensiveness, white fragility, all of these things I felt like I really grappled with in this time working on this board. And I think I would definitely have come in differently now. But I want to kind of bring in a story about there was one experience I had which was related but slightly different. So I had a friend, a black woman friend who I was getting to know, and something really difficult happened between us. And at the time, I didn't kind of realise what that was. And I feel I received quite a lot of her anger at the racism that she had suffered in her life. And I felt like, okay, I need to be in this situation just receiving this. Like, I can receive this and not take this personally. This is someone who hasn't had an opportunity to speak about all of these painful experiences that have happened to them in their life. And I felt like I was able to hear her and receive that anger without trying my best not to shut her down and not tone police her, which is something I found that was happening to me quite a lot on the board. And I just bring that in because I feel like that was one thing that I would have loved to have, looking back, that the fire and the passion and the anger that perhaps I was speaking to and needing to kind of bring things to challenge the board, I would have loved the white folks in the room to have been able to have a capacity to receive that anger and not to react and contract in defensiveness. So that's one thing I would say to anyone who's trying to do anti-racist work in an organization at that top level, is to do your shadow work, and so you can actually receive anger. You can understand that you might have shame around various things, so that you don't shut down and shut someone else down who's trying to speak up for something. So I feel like that's just such a key learning that I got, and what I would have loved in that situation looking back. So yeah, I hope that made sense. There are just a few things.
Wow, friend, that was pretty powerful. That sounds like it would be extremely uncomfortable and difficult, and very easy to say, peace out, I'm gone. You know,
You did consider it many times.
It happens in these kind of conversations because for me, as a person of color, you know, in my school, when I was mostly the only Black person, where I taught or wherever I was in as a teacher, then I was expected to speak on behalf of the whole Black race. You know, they would look by Black people. There I am, and you know, sometimes I would think I'm supposed to take that on because of my goal of being the first. But in other times, you know, I'm tired. And I just want to just chill. Y'all do, you know, and so, but it's not like I have a time off from being who I am, nor would I necessarily want that. It's time off from the feeling like you have to be, you know, all of those things. And I would also note here that I'm probably a generation or two ahead of hubby. So my hope would be, as I am turning almost 69, I'm not there yet. My hope would be that your situation would be way better than what I had to deal with. And sometimes hearing that the things are still here, it's like you work, and then we're still, what? We make, you know, things that are positive, but then we still see the same things. That probably is one of the most challenging and frustrating things to me as we move forward. And I would...
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Well, I'd say just to your last point of, you know, generational, how much time has passed. I'm 38, so there's a little bit of time difference between us. And I know I look like I'm 26. But just to think about like what hasn't changed, what hasn't, you know, obviously a lot of things are better. You know, we could get into like, let's just leave it there. And then to move on to the point I want to get to of when we talk about institutions and what they can do to be anti-racist, how they can do these changes, you know, I always go back to Nina Simone, too slow. And how much of that is a tactic of delaying, of distracting, of not changing. And so, you know, one of my hopes is always when I think about, you know, if I'm at a place where like, hey, hubby, we want to learn how to get more Black people involved. Or we want to do blah, blah. How do we reach out to this way? Maybe if we have this plan and in 6 years, like blah, blah. No, you could do this, and this tomorrow. You know, so I always want never too slow, always moving forward. Once these changes come into effect, we can see the fruits of them immediately. And things that benefit anti-racist ideals, things that benefit Black people and POCs, benefit everybody. And so I think with when you see those changes, oftentimes people are like, okay, yeah, that's a change now, down with it. You know, when Obamacare or Affordable Health Care Act came through, there were a bunch of people voting against it, and then when it came to their states, they used it. and their kids were able to get medications they couldn't afford, and so on and so forth. And it was just part of the system. Let's not go any further I'm sorry I brought up those politics, but just to think of these ideas. So, and my point is, things moving too slowly doesn't help us. Progress and change, I think, also needs to be swift in order for people to see the benefits of those changes. And I think once people feel those benefits, they stick around.
I think one of the things that's been hard for white folks is a lot of the conversation was around, check your privilege. And I know that when I got exposed to anti-racism, I thought that's what it was. To be anti-racist, I had to run around and tell other white folks what to think and how to think it. And, I was on this obnoxious moral high ground. And, did nothing to dismantle white supremacy. The flip side of the privilege is like the spiritual brokenness, the inability to imagine something else, the inability to recognize that, just what you said, hubby, what if it's better for you, it's better for me too, and we get so, I think we can get so locked into a thinking of, that means we got to give up this or this, but it's, if it's giving up, confusion, if it's giving up spiritual maladies, then that's like, let's give them up, and let's imagine something better.
Fear, accepting what is now as opposed to what might be. There's so many things that I think of, because I didn't understand why white folks that I knew about, or watched about during the marches, civil wars, civil rights, why, and earlier, why they would do things that were against their own best interest. When I would think back at some of the choices made, like rather than like the American Bandstand and Buddy Holly, whatever. There was a dance show white teenage dance show on TV. It was all white teenagers, and then they integrated. Once a week, they would have black teenagers to dance together. Now I think outside of the TV, when the kids got together, they all danced together. But on TV, it was all white except that one day. So there was pressure put, and it might have been even legal, to integrate the dancers. And rather than do that, he shut the show down. The white guy shut it down. But that over and over again, as you were talking, that I just marvel at that. But it has to do with how we identify ourselves and what we see ourselves to be and in the world. And if you feel there's nothing, if you remove this label and there's nothing left, that's probably pretty scary, huh? I'm just trying to make sense of it because it's crazy to me. But there's also a lot of money that's going on involved in a few people getting a lot of money to perpetuate this racism, in fact, and how it plays itself out in our world.
All right. Do we want to go on to the next? We can keep circling around to questions.
I guess the one thing I would say is, like, if you bring up, like, if you start talking about the money and start talking about all that, like, that becomes a whole nother thing, I always have, like, I'll say it anyway, like, when the quote that they have up for Martin Luther King Jr., it's always like the love quote and stuff like that. And I always like to remind people that, like, when Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated is when he started talking about money. And when he started saying, like, we have gotten to issues in this country that cannot be fixed with nothing but tons of money, and started getting closer to socialistic ideals, blah, 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 and then they shot that dude, That's my conspiracy theory that I get down with, whatever. Also, I think Florida Man's a real monster. But anyway, those are my two things. And so, yeah, we're going to, money needs to be done, whether we can talk about Ta-Nehisi Coates and his thing about reparations, and we can go through the decades through slavery and talk about why we should be getting this kind of money. But I think for a lot of changes, before we move off the topic of institutional racism and all of that, like, always it's changing people's minds, but it's also like money needs to be put into these places to like have resources for people to get this education, to have resources to do blah 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 blah. So yes, money.
Thank you. Anybody want to add to that? Thank you. Well, this is already just been so good. Let's stir another.
Money, 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 money. You know we gotta sing while in the midst of all this stuff. That doesn't make it any less deep or powerful. And so, music people, we understand that. We all do. Go ahead, Dan.
I was gonna say, I think that's one of the key ingredients to all this is that the anti-racist movement. There has to be, there's got to be joy in there too, and I think sometimes for me, I know in the beginning I felt like, oh, it's so hard, Edge. It's going to be so hard. It's going to be so uncomfortable, like all that stuff. But there's joy, there's joy in liberating the spirit, and there's joy in being together with people working on something that's so profoundly important and necessary. There is a joy in all that. So thanks.
I think also, go ahead, friend.
Yeah, it's just you just saying that, Dan, just kind of reminded me of the V word, vulnerability, which just feels like it's just so key to this whole anti-racism piece. And in the vulnerability, when we can let down our guard to actually show how we actually really feel, and having done anti-racist work myself, I did the Me and White Supremacy book. That was the first thing that I did to kind of inquire into, the white side of my conditioning, and just that communion with people around vulnerability of actually, okay, wow, I can climb down and admit this part of my conditioning. Wow, ow, that's really painful. But okay, you're sharing your vulnerability too. You're sharing your heart. And there's joy in that. So I really kind of like echo what you were saying. I feel like it's a kind of an acquired taste, but once you kind of start to do that inner work and start to let out some of the things inside of you that are painful, and admit to some things, it can be really joyful. And of course, in my work, I also use singing, which is incredibly joyful, as we all know. So yeah, I just felt to speak to that. I guess it's less on an institutional racism level and more just on a personal anti-racism journey that white folks may go on. Speaking up for the power of that. So get into it. You're gonna love it. Yeah.
I always say in all of the workshops that choosing joy, it's a choice to choose. That I can't control what comes at me, but I can control how I respond. And so I'm going to choose joy. Now, this is a daily, maybe sometimes moment by moment thing I have to go through, but choosing, and that's one of the things that is helping me move forward, because I come from people who I watched that happen in the midst of terrible things. That has to do with our faith too, our belief in something greater than ourselves, that we're not here by accident, that we're part of a bigger picture, bigger story, like passing the baton, you're standing on that whole connectedness. And I get really concerned because I see folks feeling really disconnected, just kind of lost out there. A lot of the young people that I do, in a way that I didn't feel necessarily. They're just different challenges. And I think I would always want to add this in any conversation that when I would talk to my white friends who are my age, they would not have had this, they didn't have the same experience that I did raising a black son. My thought was I prayed he would live to be 18, period. Just prayed he would live. Because I'm in Washington, D.C., most of the people I graduate with high school are dead or in jail. Okay, my husband, St. Louis, Missouri, most of the people he grew up with, all black communities, are dead or in jail. Okay, that's the reality of it. So for me, having a black son as a mother, just praying he would be alive. And so the fact that he's 38, the same as hubby, I'm so grateful every moment. It's like that for me. So, I mean, that's where I am, because I know too many who died. Not because of anything he done, but just because of who he is, a black man in the United States. That's it. How many people just opening up something from the glove compartment and the cop shoot you? Or you just walk it down and up. I mean, when there was the shootings that were happening recently, I had some black students at our school in Berea. It's mostly white. And I would ask them, are you worried about? They said yes. Every time they wouldn't even leave the school premises, some of the black young people, because they were afraid of being killed just for driving their car. Okay. So how do you deal with this reality? This pretend it doesn't happen, or this anger, you get mad. You know, all these things can happen because black people, newsflash, we're so diverse. Just like everybody else. You can find every kind of reaction, every kind of response, because we're diverse. Everybody else. Racism has pushed us all together because of experiencing the same things, but our responses are gonna be quite varied because of that. I'll stop there.
I'd like to piggyback on that too, because we started when you started speaking, we started on music and joy, and then we ended like all the emotions, and that's absolutely true. And I just want to add to that that all of these emotions are valid responses to institutional racism. And so when we have these experiences of, when Black Lives Matter started popping off in 1920, well, sure, and in 2020, rioting, anger, these are also valid feelings, valid reactions to a system that is trying to kill you, actively trying to kill you. And so when allowing people of color and black people in particular to have that space to, if they want to be loud and joyful, do that. If they want to be angry, if they want to sit peacefully in the streets, if they want to do these things, like, these are all valid. And so throwing that to your comment.
I love that. Thank you, hubby. Yeah.
All right. Wow. Let's go for another 10 minutes. I'll try and stay on the script here. And if anybody feels like they have something to share, just touching on question number 2, if we want, can we share a little bit about dealing with complexities around songs or music makers with the racist history? It's a little bit of a pivot here in the conversation. We can take it or leave it, but how are you navigating these waters here in 2024, where we have access to so much information about the songs and the music makers and their history? Anybody have anything on that one?
Absolutely. I think all of us do. Hubby, you go first, because you're the one doing all that music by the black folks.
Sure, I'll do it. I play what I call roots music, or American roots music, traditional American music. So it's a lot of music that is pre-World War II American music. And like I said, I think I was maybe 19, maybe 20, when I was reading a book that just casually mentioned that the banjo was a black instrument. And I had no idea. I was like, that's insane, And so it made me rethink all the music I was listening to. Like, oh, that's why this sounds like that. That's why this sounds like this. And then you learn, oh, wait, the banjo was only played by black people for 100 years. So what does that mean? Then what the hell is blackface minstrelsy at that point? So on and so forth. And so it made me just kind of look at our history and look at our pop music in this other way. That being said, a lot of this music, when we get to blackface minstrelsy and this post-Civil War America, white supremacy uses all of its tools at hand to keep itself alive. It's sustained. So as much as it is black laws and Jim Crow, it's also media and art. And so a lot of these things are in the music. So the first blackface minstrels can be looked at as ethnomusicologists, right? They're like, only black people have been playing this music, but we're going to show you like what we've learned. And we're going to give it song titles like Genuine Negro Drink, so it came from a real black person, right? And then use it to do extreme racist caricatures of black people, to help facilitate these stereotypes, to allow people to oppress us, so on and so forth. So what the hell is the point of playing those songs? What's the point of playing that music? What are you giving tribute to when you do that? And so that becomes, and how much of that, we're talking about the 1800s now, but how much of that persists through to modern day pop music, right? And so what's my answer to that? First off, I think that the history is important, right? We should know good and bad history. And to negate that this happened, to negate a lot of these songs, to negate these people, gives us a gap in our identity. And to understand that, the roots of where we are now, we're able to prune our tree now, if you like. Secondly, I'll say some of the songs are good. And so it becomes like, this is really good music. This might be, black people were not recorded or their music wasn't written down in the same way. This might be as close as we get to it. Or this was popular for 100 freaking years. Maybe we should know about it. And it makes this music more interesting. And so those are the two things I think about. And am I talking too much? No, I'm not. The last thing I'll say is, when I play these songs as well, when I encounter songs that even I don't feel comfortable singing, I change it. I won't, there's a song that I really love. It's a version of John Henry that comes from two black old time players, Sid Hemphill and Lucius Smith from Mississippi, recorded by Alan Lomax. And the song is about John Henry. It speaks to John Henry as being a brother. It has these allusions to running away and escaping. And many people don't know that John Henry was a prisoner. Civil convict leasing, blah blah blah. So there's kind of these connections to that history. And then there's a verse about how dark-skinned black women are bad at something, and so you have to cheat on them. I don't know why this verse is in that song. I don't know. Maybe they had an extra 30 seconds and thought they'd fill it up, and that was the first thing that came to mind. But when I play the song, I don't sing that verse. It's not important to the rest of the song, and obviously it's offensive and unnecessary. So I do those, take those steps to do that sort of thing as well. Yeah, I have other thoughts, but I'm going to pass it out with all that I've said so far.
You gonna jump in, Kathy?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm working on a project now about doing this, also bringing to light even more about black musicians and music in Appalachia, which has been historically associated, and hubby's one of the trailblazers in that whole area, along with others, that in Appalachia, because people like Cecil Sharp or others who collected music with the idea that they wanted to talk about this pure music from people from the British Isles. And so anything that wasn't out of that, they just ignored it. And so all these other cultures and musics that were involved in these mountain communities were just, So I'm in a book project now to bring more of that forward, as well as other people doing that. And then my question is, as I was listening to you hubbies, okay, where do we draw the line? Where do we draw the line? And absolutely, I would draw it at something like that. That was pretty clear about, dark women not do. Yeah, that text. But there's some others that are kind of, I don't know, borderline. So there's always a question. You can answer. You can jump in. I thought you were getting ready to say something.
I was, but I didn't want to cut you off. I think one of the what's the cutoff? I think it's okay for these songs to change. Like the style that I play is oral tradition. It's like these songs change. The song I always think about is "Run Nigga Run," right? Yes. Which is a song that comes from black folks, right? As we know it. And it's black folks, and like a verse might be over the fence and into the nigger ran in over the fence and into the pasture. The white man runs, but the nigger runs faster. And you can feel the blackness coming like, oh, you try to, but I run fast, And then we get like a couple decades, and what's the verse? The skillet lickers, right? I caught 3 in my cornfield. One had a bushel and one had a peck. The other had a rope and it was tied around his neck. Woo! And it's still the same song, but it has changed. And then we move forward, we get to Uncle Dave Macon, early star of the Grand Ole Opry. He's still saying "Run, Nigga, Run," but his verses now are just nonsense verses. Adam and Eve in the garden, running around, blah, 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 blah. But then you get to this 80s, and that song is now called "Run, Johnny, Run." And it's just an old-time tune. And there's no words, just instrumental. So I think, you say, where do we draw the line? It's like, I think the line could be pretty far. People can change songs and do things they want with them and still keep some sort of integrity, keep some nugget of what it is. And I think like music changing and evolving should be a part of music, and that's okay too. Okay, long inter.
Yes. And then there are some who think only certain people can sing them. There's the historical part, and there is absolutely what you say. I totally agree. There are challenges throughout.
I see what you're saying now too. And then I also just thought about that. I think one of the videos that was sent out involves Ta-Nehisi Coates talking. A student asks about using the N-word in rap songs, you know. And I remember the student made me laugh because she said something like, she's like, my friends want to like sing the N-word with this song, and I know they shouldn't, at least until we get like reparations or something. And she's like, I don't want to say it, but if black people get reparations, then I would say it, you know? And it's so like, and it becomes that question of like, what is the urge? What is the urge to sing nigger? What is the urge to say offensive things? What is, you know, are those two things connected? Like, you know, it's fun to sing dirty songs, and that might be offensive to someone, but obviously it's not the same as the N-word. But what is this urge, and where does it come from? That could be another question I'm throwing.
Yes. Oh, goodness. I'm having lots of thoughts, but what about you, Fran, before I say anything? What's your thoughts?
Well, I'm going to be honest. I feel like you've got this question completely wrapped up between you. I mean, I'm thinking more on, I guess I'm thinking more on the lines of like the history being important when, yeah, I've just found it in terms of choirs and singing and performing music. You know, when I first saw a choir, there's a choir in my local area singing A Change Is Gonna Come, and all white choir, white soloist, and the introduction they gave to the song was just so glib. And that actually hurt me. It made me angry. I know that I'm going more into the third question. I don't know whether we'll have time for that or not, but that's just the kind of tip that I'm on. So I just feel the history is so important to contextualize fully where these where the song comes from, are really honoring the song, so we're not just commodifying it, which is something, you know, I mentioned that earlier, but I really see that in the UK and in choirs generally, that we've got to that stage of kind of commodifying rather than honoring songs. And I think, as Dan was saying in the beginning about a spiritual poverty, I think it comes from that. Not having a spirit connection with music, with
Bam.
more of an
Yes.
indigenous love of what music can do for communities and the healing power of it. And so just to see this song, and I actually heard the same choir sing Trouble So Hard, which was by Vera Hall sang it, but it was on Moby's, you know, 12 million selling album that he made a fortune from, and the heart of those songs is the black singers like Vera Hall and oh gosh, I can't remember the others' names now. Bessie Jones and Willie Jones, again, like Lomax recorded them. So, and to hear that song sung by a white choir and not attributed properly and respectfully to the whole history of the racism and the what's gone in to the selling of that album, Moby making millions from it, the artists' families not getting proper recompense for it, all of that. So that's kind of what I was thinking when I was hearing you both about how the history is so important to be spoken and to be really central and honoured when we're sharing.
Yes, and as you were talking about the commodifying of music, that's why I thought it was so brilliant what you and Sean came up with, of the idea of honoring contemporary composers now, paying it forward. And I just think it's something that it's a leading thing for the whole world, that kind of idea of how we look at the music. Because commodifying, okay, black folk playing music, dancing and singing, commodifying, entertainer. So for me, when I want to share my music coming from my heart with this whole spiritual point, I try to make it a point, if possible, to contextualize as much as I can. So, and bring the, as much as I can, the people who sang the music alive. So it's not just this exotica thing, the one black person who's here and just sing, ooh, you know, the one black person, everybody else goes to their, I mean, that's still there. But you see, for me, it's important that bringing historical context helps to bring more to life and opens the door for connections, which are so important for me, and bridges between people, because that's, to me, how we move forward. I like it with the indigenous folk who, in the U.S. when they, and probably other places, but when they talked about spirit, it wasn't just spirit in the air. There was the spirit that comes through life in the trees and the flowers and the
Mm.
animals, and that we're all connected. So when you go out into the forest and you have to kill something, there's a process that you are involved with because you all are part of the same bigger thing. And that connection, that's what I say when I feel like our connection to each other seems to be even more broken. I mean, uh, and with who's come before us, gone ahead, our purpose, our role, especially as we get to the idea of me, me, me. Um, if it was me, me, me in my heritage, I wouldn't probably be here because my daddy's grandmother was called an incubator, okay? That she was purchased as an enslaved person to breed. And then his daddy was born a slave. So it's very close in my in because he was born way back 1858 or something like that, and my dad was born in 1910. Okay, I didn't know none of them people. I knew my daddy, but I didn't know them. But my my dad, being the person he was, a griot and all of that, I grew up knowing that connection. And of course, it didn't just start there. We have a whole heritage before, and we got all these white folks in our history through Scott. You know, all of this stuff, and that you're part of it, and making a change where you start. So that was the message that I think feels like to me in my generation is getting lost. And people in my generation who keep going forward are so tired. We're so tired of seeing the same thing come back and seeing some of the people in the younger generation look like they lost their ever loving mind. And then other brilliant people like, you know, hubby and Fran who are just doing other things to make the world a better place. And Dan is going on. So it's all of a it's all of a piece. I'll stop.
Thank you so much. Thank you all. Should we this will, I know this could go on for hours. But I want us to be respectful. I want to be respectful of all your time, and so I guess that's the hardest part about being a moderator is saying, well, let's transition into this next thing. Which I think I can speak as a white person. I love takeaways, and so for any of you know, there may be other people in our audience today who feel the same way, but I'd like to open that up for you know, we've gone all over the place with so many rich ideas and thoughts and so much open and honest sharing, and I can speak for myself. I am so grateful that I was here for this. Um, are there takeaways that any of the three of you have for and I would say especially for white folks who want to go deeper in their anti-racist journey here? Uh, let's take a quick
I
spin
can start.
around. Yes, Fran.
Yeah, so I just the thing that immediately came and what kick-started really my anti-racism inquiry journey was this book, Me and White Supremacy by Layla Saad. If you haven't worked through this, I would just really recommend it. It's very easy. It's very kind of, it's broken down in a really good way, and it's very hard hitting and direct, and it makes you, encourages you, invites you into your inner world to really reflect. And that for me is like base one to do that work. It's very easy to kind of to talk about it and have all of the ideas, and but to actually really do the work and take on, oh, actually this system I'm perpetuating inside of myself with my thoughts and beliefs and ideas. So I'd really recommend this book. It's fantastic if you haven't worked through that.
All right. Thank you, Fran, and we'll put that in the follow-up resources. Kathy, do you have a takeaway or two?
Oh, I would just say this work is not for the faint of heart. Expect to be uncomfortable. Expect to, when you're learning new things, to be in different spaces. But it's so worth it, like a whole world worth it, for not only our peers, but our children, our children's children, moving in a way that we are all part of something greater and building together. Um, and so when one falls, we all do. When one is that kind of concept, but it's a healing thing. And that's what I would encourage every person. And you just start where you start, step by step, and there you go. And it's not like everything in our lives has always been fine and wonderful. It ain't gonna be that, but it's empowering, and it can change the world around you in so many wonderful ways, step by step, as we learn about ourselves, like the book you had and all the other things, as we sing, as we dance, as we do all those things. I'll stop there.
All right. Thank you, Kathy. Hubby, what do you have?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of like, I've been thinking about it. You know, work. Fred says, work on yourself, and Dr. Kathy says it's difficult and hard work, but also just the joy and the love. And I guess all of those things are true. So I don't know if I have a great big takeaway other than it's to give and to love and to look within. But it's also just to give and love. And it might sound difficult, but it's actually super easy, barely an inconvenience, to to be empathetic and emphatic about love. So let's get it done. Good.
Those are some solid takeaways. And I'll offer one too. There's an organization I've been a part of since it started. About 15 years ago. It's called Constructive White Conversations, and some of you in the Daily Antidote of Song have heard me talk about this. And the reason it's important to me to get together with other white folks to work through my my racial conditioning, or my thinking, or just to get to a place where I can find my sense of purpose and start to feel like evolving in a positive way. I could sit in a conversation like this, and I could have light bulbs going off for an hour and a half, and 2 weeks later, it's gone. It's all gone. If I don't do something on a regular basis to move forward and to try and stay in the game, stay in it, stay in the anti-racist, because there's been so many layers. So I love getting together with white folks that are dedicated, open-minded, open-hearted, and want to change and want to be there for the next white person who wants to change. I do love that. It's a welcoming space. If you're white, I want to invite you to join us. Check it out. It's all volunteer. It's been going on for a while. There's 7 online meetings a month. It's grounded in love. It's grounded in the idea we're not experts. We're only one piece of the anti-racism puzzle. But for me, it's been a very important piece, and it keeps me in the game. And so that's my long-winded takeaway. Constructive White Conversations, and it's in the chat. All right.
Can I say something just on the back of that, Dan? Which is just, I just wanted to really recommend you go along to Dan's group, Constructive White Conversations, if you haven't, because I was going to say about working through this, and I'm sure lots of the themes would still be covered, would be the same themes that you'd be exploring there, but doing it, I just want to reiterate, doing it in company with people. So actually sharing your experience, that's the healing part. That's where the real change happens in my experience, and you'll get that there. So I just wanted to say that. And I also wanted to say that it's about the inner work, but then also the outer work as well. So like the inner work of coming home to your own conditioning, but then also I found like myself inquiring into what were the blocks for me actually taking action and speaking up for things that needed speaking up for. So it's not just the inner navel gazing, it's the kind of let's go in to see what the blocks are from us actually using our voice and stepping forward in situations where perhaps no one else is speaking up and we are really needed to do that. So I just wanted to say that too. It's both. Yeah.
Thank you, Fran. I really appreciate that. All right. Let's we're gonna have a follow-up email. And if you're not on the email list already, you could put your email in the chat, or you could send an email to daily@carpediemarts.org, and there'll be a follow-up from this conversation with some reflections, and also some of the resources that have been mentioned will be in it. And here's a sample, a couple samples of the emails that have gone out. The Daily Antidote of Song Anti-Racism Journey emails that have gone out. So this would be an awesome thing for any of us to be getting in our inboxes. All right, thank you. So send those emails in if you're not getting them already. And there's music. We have music here today. All right. And yes, we've had musicians talking, and now we're gonna have some songs, and we're gonna turn it over first to Dr. Kathy Bullock.
I was thinking about, thanks, Dan. Thank all of you for just this uplifting. It's always uplifting for me and healing to be in conversation with folks such as yourself, particularly you all, Fran and hubby and Dan. Thank you. Thank you. The song I was singing, well, what I'm going to sing, and I decided to sing something that speaks to me, particularly in my journey, and it has to do with the idea that even as I'm moving forward, at times of fatigue and not really sure of the journey, but there's always hope, and there's always hope that it's going to be better, in a better place. So I ended up, like I do often, getting pieces of two songs, putting them together. One is called I'm Still Alive Because There's More. And that was written by Richard Talbot, just in 2020. But I'm pairing it with an older song from back in the 1940s, of If I Can Help Somebody. And that was a song that I grew up singing in church. Martin Luther King loved the song. It was often done on his movements there. So I would sing those two together. And I think the words are provided. Can y'all hear the piano okay? Is it okay? Okay, it goes like this. God knows the plans He has for me. God knows my thoughts He thinks towards me. And nothing is an accident. I'm alive because there's more. I'm alive. I'm alive. I'm alive. I'm alive. And this is not an accident. I'm alive because there's more. If I can help somebody as I pass along, if I can help somebody with a word or song, if I can help somebody to know He is a traveling wrong, then my living shall not be in vain. there's more. You and me, we're alive. Oh, because there's more.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Kathy Bullock. That was fantastic. Thank you for sharing your words and thank you for sharing your music today. And now we'll go over to Hubby Jenkins. You're
Good to unmute myself. Hi, I'm Hubby Jenkins, and the song that I'd like to sing today is an old one. Comes from the ring shout tradition from the Georgia Sea Islands, and people believe that the ring shout is what a lot of early slave churches might have sounded like. It's call and response and polyrhythms, usually people using their hands and their bodies to make these sounds. And the song Daniel, the story behind this song is one day a bunch of enslaved people somewhere were having a party. And this guy Daniel decides that they need meat for the party. So he's going to go and steal meat from Master. And when he goes to steal the meat, the white folks come out of the big house. And so all the other enslaved start singing this ring shout that's supposed to sound like a gospel song, Daniel and the Lion's Den, but they're really telling Daniel that he's got to move. Move, Daniel. Run, Daniel. Go the other way, Daniel. And so it's got this kind of double meaning. This idea of like what gospel music was besides being freed up music, but also being this music that we were able to hide what was truly going on for ourselves. Be able to speak to each other in this code. Why can't you say some words? Because it's for us. Anyway, keep moving forward. So it's got one part. It's got two parts really. Let's see if I can find a key that I can actually sing it in. Oh Lord, pray sinner come. Oh Lord, these sinners gone to hell. So I'm going to say, move Daniel, move. And you'll say, Daniel. Move Daniel, move Daniel. Move Daniel, move Daniel. Move Daniel, move Daniel. Ba 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 Daniel. Ba da ba ba Daniel. Got it? Good. Our second part is, oh Lord, pray sinner come. Oh Lord, sinner gone to hell. So it sounds like this. And this part we sing in unison. Oh Lord, pray sinner come. Oh Lord, these sinners gone to hell. Move Daniel, move. Move Daniel, move. Got it? Good. And I'm going to be imitating the polyrhythms with these bones. One of the world's oldest instruments. So here we go. Ready? Let's do it. Move Daniel, 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 move Daniel. Go the other way, Daniel. Go the other way, Daniel. Go the other way. Go the other way, Daniel. Shout, Daniel, shout. Go shout, down, down, down. Go Daniel, down, now, down. Go Daniel, shout, oh now. Oh Lord. Pray sinner come, oh Lord, these sinners gone to hell. Move Daniel, move. Move Daniel, 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 move. Move Daniel, move Daniel, run Daniel, run Daniel, run Daniel, run Daniel. Sit in your way, sit in your way, Daniel, sit in your way, sit in your way, Daniel. Oh Lord, pray sinner come. Oh Lord, these sinners gone to hell. Move Daniel, move Daniel, move Daniel, move Daniel. Go the other way, Daniel. Go the other way, Daniel. Run Daniel, run. Run Daniel, run Daniel. Run Daniel, run. Run Daniel, run Daniel. Great job.
Wow. Thank you so much. Hubby Jenkins. This has been fantastic. All right. Well, speaking of anti-racism, I know that if I wasn't involved in anti-racism, I never would have met my wife in the first place, and I don't think that I would really be a suitable mate in an interracial relationship. But thank God we're here, we're together, and Claudia's here. We're gonna here we go. We're gonna sing a song together. All
Wow,
right.
hubby had me dancing. I just want to say thank you to Kathy, to Fran, to hubby. What an enlightening, uplifting conversation. I'm so grateful. and to my husband too. It was really wonderful. And I looked at the screen and I thought to myself, look at this. This is, I think it was about 68 people at one point that are here. So I'm grateful to be here. We got a song we're going to sing with you all. I think some of you know this one. It's called Let Love Be Your Guide. You want to teach the parts?
Yeah, we wrote this on the day of John Lewis's funeral after reading the op-ed that he had written for the New York Times, knowing that he would be passing in a couple weeks. He wrote something just as a way to carry everything that he had learned forward. And we boiled it down as best we could into one sentence, and that sentence is, let love be your guide. You want to teach everybody?
Oh, yes. All right. So the first part, let love be your guide. Y'all try it. Let love be your guide. Yes. Rezzy's singing back here too. All right. Part 2 goes, let love be your guide. Let love be your... Yeah. Fabulous.
All right.
If there's something I must tell you now, let love be your guide. The longing of the human heart knows how to let love be your guide.
Well, I stood among you and I knew, oh, let love be your guide. It was clear what you were here to do. Let love be your guide. Be your guide when you're weary. Be your guide when you're unsure. The winds of change are on your side. Let love be your guide.
Well, history tells us this is not new.
Let love be your guide.
Yesterday's lessons still hold true.
Let love be your guide. Hey, the nightmare was deep and long. Let love be your guide. Now the air is troubled with the sweetest song.
Come on and
let love be your guide. Be your guide when you're weary. Let it be your guide when you're unsure. The winds of change are on your side. Let love be your guide.
Well, I may not be with you when the day is done,
Let love be your guide.
but I know you'll be marching till the peace is won.
Let love be your guide. Be your guide when you're weary. Let it be your guide when you're unsure. The winds of change are on your side. Let love be your guide. Be your guide when you're weary. Let it be your guide when you're unsure. The winds of change are on your side. Let love be your guide.
And may it guide you in all that you do. Thank you so much.
Thank you, babe. All right. Oh, what a treat. All right. Well, it's time to wrap this up. Thank you again, Claudia.
Yes, of course.
All right. We're going to say our goodbyes and thank yous. We want to thank Carpe Diem Arts. We want to thank the Daily Antidote of Song, the community, the supportive community. Grateful for all the commitment to anti-racism in the Daily Antidote of Song, as well as Carpe Diem Arts. I want to thank everybody who came out today, took time out of your afternoon to be here with us. And most of all, I want to thank Fran, Andre. I want to thank Dr. Kathy Bullock. And I want to thank Hubby Jenkins for coming here for this incredible conversation today. Again, my name is Dan Zanes. It's been a thrill and an honor to be here with all of you. And there's talk of this being an ongoing series. So again, put your email, send your email in to stay connected to whatever's going on, and stay on the journey here. Stay on the journey here with us. This is going to just get better and better and better. And what a blessing it's been here today. So thank you, everybody.